As we get started with Chapter 5, it's important to remember that at some point in our careers as leaders, as managers, and even in our daily lives and day-to-day type interactions, at some point we're going to be faced with a situation where we need to motivate somebody. Maybe we need to motivate a team member if we're a coach. Maybe we need to motivate a child if we're a parent. Maybe we need to motivate a student if we're a teacher or a professor. And so at some point in our lives, motivation will become important. So what better time than now to talk about how you as leaders and managers can improve your ability to motivate the people that work with you and work for you. By the end of the module, together with the lectures and together with the readings and quizzes and exercises that you do, you should be able to, number one, define motivation and how it affects everyone's behavior. You should be able to use the various theories, expectancy, goal setting, equity, acquired needs, and self-determination theories to actually do something tangible to motivate people. So by the end of this, you should walk away with a practical set of guidelines that will help you be a better motivator when you want to motivate your people. First of all, very briefly, what do we mean when we say motivation? So motivation really describes the psychological processes that determine how intense, how persistent our efforts will be as we do something, right? So if you are motivated to get an A in all of your courses, and if you truly are motivated, then you're likely to be very psychologically intense about studying, about preparing for class, and very persistent as you pursue your studies. So motivation refers to the intensity and persistence as we pursue an activity. There are two pieces or two types of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation and there's intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation means we're motivated to do something because we're going to get a reward, right? So if I told you that if this were a face-to-face class, and if I told you that if you received a perfect score on attendance, if you came to every class, then you were guaranteed to get nothing less than an A-. You might say, well, great, now I'm motivated to go to every class because I'm going to get the reward. Of course, that's not a real proposal, but hypothetically, if I were offering that, that would be an example of extrinsic motivation. You would come to class because you wanted the higher grade. Very different from that is intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation happens when you don't need a reward to be motivated. Just the activity itself, just the positive internal feelings of doing the activity are enough to get your motivation to be high. So in my example from a moment ago, if you are intrinsically motivated to attend a class because you really are interested in the subject, or you really see how that course is going to help you in your own career, then you are intrinsically motivated and you don't need the professor to dangle the reward of a high grade over your head, so to speak, right? So extrinsic versus intrinsic. Another example could be how motivated you are at your job, right? So an extrinsically motivated employee might say, I'm really motivated to do my job because if I do a good job, I'm going to get a 10% raise. An intrinsically motivated person might say, I'm really motivated to do my job because I love my job, I enjoy it. Doing a good job in and of itself is its own reward. I don't need a 10% raise. I'll take it, but I don't need it. Okay. So intrinsic versus extrinsic. If you've ever been in situations where you've been motivated versus not motivated, you probably realize the power of being motivated. And so I can tell you, if you are in a situation where you have a team of people who are not motivated, it certainly pays to keep close attention to this module, because you'll walk away with some practical guidelines to help increase people's motivation. So now that we have that basic backdrop, let's go to the first theory of motivation that we're going to cover. And This theory of motivation is the expectancy theory of motivation. And it really highlights the fact that if you're trying to motivate somebody, you can't just focus on one thing. You've got to focus on three specific components of the expectancy equation. And here's what it says. It says basically that people are motivated to behave in ways that produce outcomes that they want and rewards that they want. Right? So we're motivated to act in ways that produce outcomes that we want and rewards that we want. What does that actually mean in practice? Well, we need to learn a couple of terms so that we can put this into action. And let's use an example as we go through this. So let's say you are the member of a football team, and you really want to win the championships this year. And your coach tells you that in order to perform well, you need to attend practice 7 days a week. Now, some of you might say, great, I can see that there is a direct link between everyday practice and my performance improving. But some of you might say, I think that's a bit much. 7 days a week, that's way too much practice. I don't see the link between all of that practice and my performance. So, if you believe that all of that practice is truly going to make you a better performer, then you have high expectancy. All right, expectancy is the link between your effort, your practice, and your performance on the team. If you have high expectancy, then you see very clearly how the practice is going to increase your performance. A similar example, if you're taking a course like this one and you really want to perform well, and I tell you that you need to take quizzes, you need to submit assignments, you need to read the textbook, and you need to watch the video lectures. And if you believe that doing all of that effort is going to directly help you perform better, meaning learn the course material better, then you have a high expectancy. You can say, I see how that's going to help me learn. I get it. However, if you say, I really don't understand how reading the textbook is going to make a difference, first of all, you'd be wrong. But second of all, you would have a low expectancy because you don't see the strong link between reading the textbook and grasping the material. Okay, so the first step is expectancy needs to be high in order for people to start to be motivated. But that's not enough. That's only the first piece. The second piece is, okay, great. I see that if I put in the effort, I'm going to perform better. But if I perform better, am I actually going to receive a reward? Am I going to receive the reward that my manager or my professor says I'm going to receive? And that's called instrumentality. If you have high instrumentality, that means you see that there's a link between your performance and a reward. Okay? So let's take a situation where, again, you're on the football team and one of the rewards is that you win the championship. If you truly see how your individual performance on that football team is going to increase the chances of the team winning the championship, then you have high instrumentality. On the other hand, if you say, I don't know, regardless of how much I perform, regardless of how well I do, I never think this team is going to collectively be good enough to win the championships. That means you have low instrumentality. Right? So there's sort of a breakdown there in motivation. But that's not even enough. Let's say you make it through the first two hurdles. Let's say you have high expectancy. You see how your effort is going to increase your performance. You have high instrumentality. You see how your performance is going to get you a good outcome, winning the championship. That is not going to be enough if the reward is not something that you value. And that is what we call valence. Valence is when you value the reward that you get. If you don't value the reward that you get, then you have low valence, and that breaks down your motivation. So for example, if I were trying to motivate a class and I said, I have a proposal. If everybody in class gets at least a 90 on the final exam, then I am going to reward the class by bringing them in a book that I'd love for them to read because it's going to help their career. Some of you might like that. That would mean you have high valence. You like the reward. Others might say, a book? That doesn't sound very exciting to me as a reward. I have low valence, and you would be not very motivated then to do well. This comes up quite a bit in the real world. I had an experience with this, unfortunately, in my own experience when I was managing one of my company's businesses in Japan. I was trying to motivate and reward some of my employees, and I did an okay job here. I showed them how their effort will help their performance. I showed how their performance might give them an outcome, but I chose the wrong reward. One of the employees I was really trying to motivate, I told him that I would give him a very generous raise in his salary if he was able to achieve what he was supposed to achieve. And it backfired. He told me that that was not motivating for him. In fact, it was demotivating for him to know that he would get such a big raise. This was the kind of a person who really thought that other people deserved a raise before he did. What does that tell you? It tells you that for each of us, our valence might not be the same, right? I might be motivated by a week off, an additional week off from my job, so I can have more free time. You might be motivated by a 10% raise. Somebody else might be motivated by the ability to have their education paid for by their employer. Someone else might be very motivated by the ability to have childcare from their employer, right? Different rewards motivate different people. And so you've got to be sure that there's a strong link between effort and performance and outcomes, but also you have to make sure that the reward that you choose has high valence, meaning people value what they're being rewarded by. Now, what does all this mean in the real world if you're a manager and a leader and you're looking to use expectancy theory to motivate your teams? Well, a few things. Obviously, the first one is you have to figure out what your employees value before you start offering them rewards. You might think your reward is a great idea, but they might not value that reward, as I just told you in my example with my Japanese employee. The other thing you'll need to do is you'll need to identify good performance, measure performance of people on the team so that you can reward them, right? It's very hard to reward people if you're not measuring their performance and if you're not identifying that good performance to begin with. Another thing you can do down here is link the desired outcomes to their performance. And this is why it's important if you have employees working for you to clearly describe their jobs, clearly review their performance periodically. And if they are achieving what they set out to achieve, you've got to link that performance to the outcomes. So for example, if you are the member of that football team who made a lot of effort and improved your performance and wound up having his team win the championships, your coach needs to reinforce that good behavior and make it clear to you how your performance had a direct impact on helping the team win that championship. Without that reinforcement, without that linkage, it's not always possible to reinforce that positive motivation. So these are just some examples of how you can use expectancy theory. The key to remember in expectancy theory, though, is that there are three pieces to the equation. Make an effort, and you need to see that your effort is going to result in high performance. If you see that link, you have high expectancy, and that's good. You're more motivated. Also need to see that your performance is going to lead to a reward. If you don't believe there's going to be a reward, you're not going to be motivated. And you have to make sure that you like the reward. If you don't like the reward, if you have a low valence, then you're not going to be motivated either. So remember these three pillars of expectancy theory whenever you think about how to motivate your teams